Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 89 of Confessions of a Market Maker. I'm your co host, Ray, aka All Day Ray, aka the Low Float Goat, and I'm joined here by my esteemed co host, former market maker, 20 years, and current day retail trader, the man who spent all summer gallivanting throughout Western Europe. It's a long way from gallivanting through the back alleys of Vancouver. The man who made owning two cell phones popular, the Gorilla of House Street, JJ. How's it going?
Hi, good brother. How are you today?
I'm doing good, doing very good. And our guest today is known worldwide as the first lady of trading psychology, alongside the father of trading psychology, Mark Douglas, former floor trader. Today, as an investment trader, she coaches all levels of traders and is co author of 15 books, including the award winning book, The Disciplined Trader, the first written book on the subject of trading psychology. Of course, I'm talking about Paula T. Webb. Paula, how's it going?
Good. Nice to be
Awesome.
with you guys here today.
Awesome.
Welcome.
It's an honor to have you on, Paula. Really appreciate it. I would like to start off the conversation on your background. And for me, for listeners who aren't familiar with you, you are a former floor trader. I would like to hear about how that came about in your experience on the floor.
Well, after college, I went to Chicago to visit a family member and thinking I was just going to have a vacation time. And they strongly suggested that I just start interviewing since I was out of college. So I went on a bunch of interviews with all different types of industries. And my college education was just liberal arts because I didn't really want to be pigeonholed into a certain thing. And, I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I went on a bunch of interviews, banks and corporations and Oppenheimer Securities. And one of the last interviews I went on was at the Mid America Commodity Exchange. And that was the first exchange at that time. And this was like the 1980s at the time that was offering mini contracts. And I think they were founded in the 1970s, but don't quote me on that. Anyway, so I didn't know anything about commodities. I only knew about stocks because my father and I had paper traded when I was younger. And so I wasn't really that interested in that job. And plus, it was the lowest salary I got offered. And so I was going to take the job at Oppenheimer Securities. And I went home and told my family member, which job I was going to take. And they said, no, you're going to work at the exchange. And I'm like, that's the least amount of money, my God. And the family member who was a very astute vice president at one of the largest banks in Chicago said, look, you're single, you're young, and at any given moment, there's going to be 1,500 possible eligible men on the trading floor. So you need to be at the exchange. And so, I mean, this is a true story. Okay.
Ah,
And I'm like, okay, whatever. I mean, she was older than me. I figured, all right, she knows more than I do. So I took the job. But I have to say, uh, I was completely smitten with the industry. And so for the next couple of years, I worked my way up from secretary to the vice president to administrative assistant, running the floor operations. And along the way, I met some of the best and some of the worst floor traders ever, traders who started there and went over to the big boards, the board of trade or the CME, and
Mhm.
also traders who offset their larger positions by the mini contracts. So
okay.
it really was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And after going as far as I could in the exchange, I thought, well, I got to get in on this. And so I took a job as a runner and a phone clerk on the floor and learned how all that worked and how everybody interrelated with everybody, much more so. And I just loved it. And this was way back when there were no personal computers at the time, there were no cell phones. And so to read a chart, you had to make a chart because buying charts, and they actually had charting books, but they were 35, $50, and you bought them
Yeah.
once a week. So they really weren't that current. So I got taught how to create a tick chart from really, really good traders. And I also got to try out their trading systems, which were literally written out on legal pads. Okay, nothing, there was nothing typed up. There was no electronic trading such as it is today. So it kind of gave me a good foundation of really understanding how the markets evolved from the early 1900s up until that point, and then just how interrelated all the markets are based on what every trader thinks. And this was years before I met Mark. So it was just really cool. I loved it. It was trading is seductive. It still is to this day, and it's probably one of the best fields I can imagine being in. So in 1984, a mutual friend asked me to help a friend of his type up a speech. And so one day after trading closed, we went over to Mark's office, and I got introduced to him, and I sat down and started typing his speech, and he left to go run an errand. And I admit it, I was nosy. I started looking through his files, and I thought, man, this guy's got something going on here. I got to get to know him. And so he came back, and I had finished typing his speech, and I admitted, I said, hey, I went through your files. I'm nosy. What are you doing with all these notes? And so then he explained his background, where he had given up a very lucrative career in commercial casualty insurance for huge corporations. I think in the late 70s, he was pulling in over 300,000 a year, not including all his bonuses and perks and company car. And he gave all that up to start working at Merrill Lynch for $22,000 a year as a retail broker. So that took a lot of guts as far as I was concerned at that point. And so he was a retail broker for a number of years. And he, like myself, started watching the other brokers, trying to figure out how they were assessing the market and what their perspective was. And he just started taking notes. And that's what I was reading were his notes. And he gave that up he didn't know what he wanted to do. I mean, he didn't know if he's going to write a book or if he's going to do workshops or whatever, but he just knew he had to work on the personal perspective, the mental perspective of how to become the best trader, not only for himself, but for other traders. And that was basically where I was at the same time. But I had a floor trader perspective. So those two attitudes really kind of melded quite nicely together. And so we worked till about midnight that night or 1 o'clock in the morning. And then we went out for a late dinner. This was in downtown Chicago. There was places open all the time. And the rest is history. I mean, I quit trading as a floor trader pretty soon after that. And we just started collaborating, writing the first book, The Disciplined Trader. And that's our journey up until today. So,
Wow.
Yeah, incredible. So much. Yeah, go ahead, JJ.
That's just it's nice to hear about, your start and things like that. I too started in the era of paper tickets and timestamps. So a little bit, after you, but I just started right when we were closing the floor up in Canada in Vancouver. So but yeah, we still used paper tickets and, the old timestamp, and everything was pretty manual. You had to refresh the level too by hitting enter all the time.
right. Well, and there was a connection to trading. I
Exactly.
mean, there was a physical connection, which
Definitely.
translates into the mental connection much more so than I think today. And that's why
Oh,
our work continues, with new products and books coming out, because since it's all electronic and there really are no more floor traders per se, except for the
exactly.
few that we see on the news shows, it's really a lonely endeavor, which I
It
hear
is.
from so many traders. And so that plays into the mental aspect as well, because since
Definitely.
you're kind of a loner and
Yep.
you're not seeing other traders around you reacting or
Exactly.
acting, it's
Exactly.
really difficult to just stare at a screen,
Yep.
no matter what kind of bells and whistles you may have going off or alerts.
Exactly.
It's not,
Yeah.
there's no, you can't see or hear somebody else's mental perspective. So you really don't know what they're thinking. And then you start second guessing yourself. And
Oh yeah, definitely. And even those checks and balances, like here you just click a button, you're in a trade, right?
right.
In the old days, you pick up the phone and call it in, and the guy on the other line or the lady on the other line would go, you'd give them the order, and they'd kind of, they because they're in the market, they'd be like, "What are you nuts?" You know,
Right.
are you high? Why would you do that, right? And at least you had that check and balance, right? Where now it's just, click send, the order's in, right? So it is a lot harder that way because there's no sort of stoplight.
Right.
Yeah. Paul, something you said about you were learning how everything was interconnecting from your time working on the floor, and even before working on the floor, how it all came together. Uh, do when I first started trading, and JJ mentored me into this, and JJ's a big historian of the market, on the the structure, how everything intercorrelates as well, and I it was a big difference for me once I started understanding, and I'm sure I don't understand it to the extent that you guys do, but did you think that provided an edge for you, or could still provide an edge for someone to this day?
Oh, absolutely. A lot of the challenge for me is when younger traders, and when I say younger, I mean, I would say 20s and 30s, call up, and they're really having challenges understanding how the markets work, because I would say a good 80-90% of them, grew up on video games.
Hmm.
And uh, I mean, PlayStation and all that. And so they do not have a concept at all of there being a live person on the other side of any trade. They still think they can beat the computer because they think it's a computer game, it's a computer
Yeah.
system. And so, yes, I know there's algorithms and all that kind of stuff, but all of that, even algorithms, which I explained to them, are created by live
Humans.
people.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, even though you may put the data into a computer, the computer program was still created by a live person. So there are
Yeah.
still perspectives that are human based. It's not electronic based. It's
The,
electronic based just on the parameters that humans put into it. So
the
I
execution.
try to
Yeah.
extrapolate that down to a little core level for them, but it's still very difficult. And even more so now, because the exchanges no longer have their educational resources. So a lot of the videos and a lot of the foundational information about how the markets were founded and how they evolved is no longer in existence. So there
Mm.
isn't a resource for me to send these guys back to anymore. And that's really a tragedy, because I mean, I get it. It's the way of the world, and everything's electronic and moves fast, and the speed of light, and you can trade 24/7 and all that. But if you don't have the basic foundation of knowing how it works,
Yeah.
from one person to another person to another person, to a hedge fund manager, to a bank, to an institutional trader, if you don't understand that there is a human mental connection, I'll be honest with you
Well,
guys, you're not going to make it as a trader,
very
because you're
true.
not going to think that your mental connection is a part of trading.
That
You
that's
see?
that's very true. And I mean, I moved price for 25 years, right? So my job was to sell huge amounts of stock and create markets to get liquidity and get the insider's position out. And so I know what, when I saw Mark's videos, and he was telling people how why price moves, I was searching for a way to communicate this to people that I teach, and that it finally clicked, and it was so helpful. And people forget that it's a market, right? That's why it's the stock market, because you buy a bunch of cheap crap and sell it at a higher price. That's, supply, demand, these things are kind of important,
Yeah, absolutely.
you
Right.
know.
But
Yeah.
but for those people who have only grown up with electronic games or videos or perspective, and they're just having
Mhm.
fun on a screen, whether it's their
Ah,
phone or a computer, they already have a lack of connection to the human experience. And so they're like, well, hey, I won on my online poker. I was the head guy in online hearts or whatever it was, or I killed the most people in the war games, whatever. So they're missing that mental component that they are not going to know why they're reacting or acting to anything because they don't think it's real. And the only way they find it's real is after they've lost a boatload of money. That's it.
True.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you this, Paula, just to because I am of that generation. I'm 30, so I kind of grew up more
Okay.
with the electronics. And I 100% agree with everything you're saying, and like even like the question I prefaced this conversation with, where it was a game changer for me. Um, having JJ, uh, teach me more of this as opposed to the strategical aspect. The one thing I would say is I do think, and I spoke to you previously before the podcast. I come from a poker background. I did grow up with video games and stuff like that. I think the one maybe pro case to it that it does, I think, help at least like sharpen like a strategical mind. I think in certain respects, and at least I know poker did that for me. Well, would you agree with that, or you think there's anything there?
No, I think if someone is a professional poker player, um, whether it's online or in person, I mean, I'll share with you. Mark was an excellent poker player. Excellent. Um, I'm a good player, but I'm not good at betting. So the few times that we would go to tournaments, he would do the betting and I would play the cards. So that was always kind of fun. But I knew that about myself. I knew the cards. I played my hand well, but I didn't know the betting technique.
Okay.
And then of course we got together and then we just did it together. So I didn't have to learn it. But my point being is when I would watch him, and his father was a competitive bridge player in Vegas. He played with many famous people, including Omar Sharif, who was a master
Really?
bridge. Oh yeah, yeah. So I think
I-
it was inherent within Mark's psyche just to have the kind of mind that can discern
Sure.
how to win. Okay, and so that kind of brings me back to your earlier question. Is it, and I'm not being insulting to anyone younger. It's just that you can have a mindset of winning, but you still have to have a human connection to that winning to sustain that winning mindset.
Mm.
So yes, I would agree. If you've been a professional poker player, any of you out there, um, then you know what I'm talking about because you do have a connection, not just to the cards, but you know there's other players. You see what I mean?
Yep.
Whereas with trading, you're just looking at a screen.
Hmm.
You don't know the other side of that screen. And so it's very easy to disconnect from realizing there's another guy over there taking your money or giving you money.
Right, absolutely. And I remember when I first started trading, that was one of the aspects I guess I didn't like at first. It was like, you're playing poker. It's like if I'm playing live, I can see the other guy, right? He's in my face. I can
Mhm.
see my competition. Yeah, when I'm trading at home, I'm not. It's a little like impersonal. And I 100% get the point of what you're saying. Um, yeah, that on. So just a reminder to the listeners, if you guys would like to join a supportive professional community of traders, you can join us at microefutures.com. So before we jump into some trading psychology, Paula, I want to know what does 2022 look like for you? Do you still trade? Are you just coaching? Maybe both?
Um, After Mark passed away unexpectedly several years ago, um, I will just share with you that uh, there was a there was just there was a regrouping that had to take place because even though Mark and I wrote all the materials together and did workshops together, um, we never videoed our joint workshops because first of all they were 5 days long and we were usually exhausted by the end. But um, it was just we just felt there was too much proprietary material in those 5-day workshops. So that's how a lot of people didn't really know I was associated with him other than his wife. And plus I don't have his last name, which, is neither here nor there to me, but apparently it was to other people. So the first couple of years was a lot of rebranding to get my name out there and, trying to limit the piracy, which, I gave up on eventually. But so those first 2 years I did not trade because I was not 100%, because I had to find my focus again, as now being without my partner and the person that I bounced everything off of, and vice versa. So about 3 years ago I got back into trading, but I found that I really didn't have that much of an interest in scalping anymore, and primarily just because I'm literally doing everything by myself other than my staff, of course. And I didn't have Mark there, because we had a lot of fun scalping together. We had different ways of trading, different markets we traded, but it was just a fun thing. So I found that I didn't find it as enjoyable doing it by myself. So that's how I understand traders today that say, I feel like I'm all alone. I'm like, hey, I got it. So now I'm more of an investor. I went back to my first love, which is stocks, and I primarily am investing in startups and green stocks, and that's really, really a lot of fun to me now. So it could be a startup, whatever, for a month or a week or 6 months. It doesn't really matter what my criteria is for choosing that, but that's my passion right now, is getting in on the ground level of some really cool stocks, or whatever, companies that are up and coming. And so, once I finish more book projects, I'll have a little more free time and I may get back into scalping, but I'm not sure. But so right now, yes, I'm just trading stocks and, of course, doing the coaching. And the coaching really isn't as much time as most people would think. Most of my time is really developing new material and developing ways on how to get that material out in the best venues, you know, to most traders. And the challenge that we have with that is because, as you know, there's a lot of, well, most of Mark's videos are all pirated now, and a lot of them, even though you may not know it, they have been edited. And so, yeah. And so, for length of time and content and that sort of thing. And so that was really troubling to me a couple of years ago when I found this out, because it's really damaging. It can be very damaging to traders when they're missing a component out of a workshop. And, or whoever has posted it will say, here's the workshop, here's all you need. No, that's not all you need. It's just a workshop. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can't fix the world. I get that. But so moving forward, to do the podcasts that are coming out, to write the books, it's really important for me to just take it to the nth degree to make sure that there's no gaps in the information being presented. And, and with any kind of podcast, I think we're going to have some sort of disclaimer at the front, like, this will run X amount of minutes. If you find this with less minutes or more minutes, it's been edited or it's been changed to some degree. So that in itself has taken a lot of my mental energy to make sure that more traders don't get hurt financially by misinformation or lack of information. So does that kind of answer your question?
That's
Probably too long of an answer, but
no.
Yeah, so I'm still
Right,
trading, I'm still coaching, but
Yeah.
primarily we're really working on some cool material. And I mean, it's the path that we had planned on all along. So it's just a continuation of our material. I literally have a storage locker of written materials that we just haven't formulated yet into production.
Yeah.
So it's and then of course making everything, one of the main themes that we're working on now is helping traders think for themselves. And anybody who has been following us on Twitter will know what I'm talking about. But because especially with the political situations going on around the world, we have to understand that there is an underlying current of uncertainty, unlike we've never known before. So that's kind of the focus that we're moving forward on, to help traders understand that we taught it for decades. Each moment in the market is unique, and you never know what will happen.
Yeah.
But now it really is true in every aspect of life. So if you don't really believe that for your trading, you're going to be you're going to be probably pretty much boom and busting for a while. So
Yeah.
so we're kind of taking that a little deeper.
Yeah, I love that concept. It's so important, game changing, and just I can relate to what you're saying too, Paul. Bringing it back, you're saying you kind of like what's not as fun trading or scalping without Mark. And JJ, that's something I appreciate about trading and like us having a community. It's way more enjoyable
Hmm.
having people there, even just bouncing ideas off each other, um, rooting each other on, or if we're in the same trade. I just think it's real enjoyable. It's like almost like a team aspect to it that I grew up playing
Definitely.
sports, and I kind of miss that in a sense.
Oh, definitely. It's
Yeah.
yeah, I that for me, because I mean, after running trade desks and being on desks, and then you're sitting in a room by yourself, so you don't get that flow of information, you don't get the all of that. So that's when the psychology part of it really starts coming into play, and that's why I mean, when I started retail trading, I was horrible at it because I had no discipline. I'm used to moving markets, and if a trade goes bad, one of my market makers will stuff it for me, no problem. And all of these things that I used to do. So I had to discover discipline, and then all of a sudden I was hesitating, and then I found Mark on YouTube, thank God, and then I bought the book, and and then I just realized, oh yeah, that's right, we're moving price, and this is what I got to do, and the way he explained things just kind of snapped me out of it and got me back into the flow of things. And I was just so ever grateful to have discovered him and his work, and we're glad that you're continuing that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I love what I do, and I have to tell you, when a trader gets it, I mean, even though it's usually over the phone, but I can sense when they get it, and when that
Hmm.
light bulb goes off, it is super cool. It is
Yeah.
just so awesome that they've made the decision to step onto this journey of increased awareness to fulfill their financial goals, and it's awesome. It really is, because Mark and I did it ourselves, and that's why we started teaching it to others, because all the stuff that we write about, everything that we learned ourselves, it works. I mean, it's the source, to be the best trader you can be. And so it's pretty awesome. So that's why this will go on and on and on
Yeah.
until
Yeah.
whenever.
Yeah. And and for myself too, I just think it's like endlessly fascinating to just the realm of our mind and psychology. But we'll dive into a second. Before we jump into that, Paul, I want to ask you. You're just bringing up uncertainty in the markets. I mean, there's always been, right? But I'm also just curious to what you think of you've been in markets for a while, just the changing dynamics of markets, and maybe with retail trading becoming very popular, especially recently. I know it did in like the late 90s, but even now, and like you got meme trading, etc. Just, do you have any thoughts on that?
No. No, and I have to be honest with you. I get asked this quite frequently, and the challenge is that if I make a comment on anything, a lot of people, not saying yourself, but other people listening, would take it as a recommendation to some sort of trading over another,
Mm,
trading one market over another versus another.
mhm.
Um, and so I just kind of steer clear of whatever, because I'm not here to express an opinion about the markets per se. I'm here to help traders become the best traders they can be. And trading is trading is trading. And if you have an opinion about the retail trading versus the cryptos versus, the gold or the oil or whatever, or someone expresses an opinion about that, then that may go into another trader's perspective set or their set of beliefs in a way that could be not positive for them.
Sure.
So I really try to steer clear of anything other than just the mental aspect of viewing trading as a business and as a venue where you can make more money than you've ever made if you have the right perspective. And it doesn't matter what market or what's going on in the markets at any given moment. All that matters is what you see to create or to achieve your goals.
Excellent. I
That
love it.
makes sense?
That makes 100% sense, Amber.
100%.
Yeah, respect. Yeah, respectable answer for sure. That's great.
Definitely. And I love the business part of it. I preach that all the time. And I watched one of your interviews where you said, do you have a business plan as a trader? And most people were like, huh? What? What do you mean? It's like, you are a small business operator. Your money is your inventory, and you have to, that's your capital. And then you said, I remember you saying, you have your capital that you trade with and then the money that you pay yourself, with, and just really, really important concepts that it was nice to hear somebody else say it.
All right, let's jump into some trading psychology topics. Paula, this first question I got here, and I got to give her a shout out. Shout out to Martha. She gave me a couple questions she wanted me to ask you. Here's the first one. She says she wanted to know what your and Mark's bad habits were when you first started trading.
Well, I don't know if Mark had any bad habits or anything because we didn't meet until, I mean, he had been trading. I think he started trading. Well, he was trading through his broker before he started with Merrill Lynch. So I don't know I just don't know anything about him. And for me, considering I left the exchange to start working on the trading floor, I don't know as I really had any bad habits because I was just a sponge and just watching all the other traders. And if and if I didn't do something right, like if I didn't do my chart right, or I started getting an opinion about the market, I was only in my 20s, let's get real. I mean, everybody has an opinion when you're in your 20s because you already know everything. But I had the luxury of those traders setting me straight immediately. So I think, my perspective of working with all these traders who kind of took me under their wing, as I said earlier, it really was a luxury. And I am truly blessed to have had that type of education from these guys. Like I said, I saw the best of the best and the worst of the worst. And then with Mark, he saw the best of the best and the worst of the worst brokers. And so I think, I mean, like I said, I can't speak for him. I'm sure maybe I had some bad. Well, I know I did. I have a bad habit. And I'll give you a good example of this. And I've used it before, but I was on the trading floor, and there's usually a core group of you that would hang out together. And one of our buddies lost like $25,000, and this was on a Friday. And he had a wife and a mortgage and kids and all that kind of stuff. He was older. And at the end of the trading day, he said, all right, we'll meet at the Broker's Inn, which was the bar in the lobby of the Board of Trade building. And so, he walks out to settle up his trades at the end of the day. And I went to one of my other friends and said, what, how can he just go to the bar? He just lost $25,000. Now, we're talking 1980s. So that was a lot of money back then. And especially to me, who was in my 20s, I'm thinking, geez, oh, Pete, And so they said, no, don't worry about it, because they're all guys. Okay. There were no other girls in my core group of trading buddies. All right. And there were very few women back then anyway. And so anyway, we get over to the bar, and I think his name was Jeff. He's like, okay, drinks are on the house, and he's got an open tab with his American Express card. And I'm just sitting there stunned. I'm thinking, what the hell's the matter with this guy? I mean, literally, I was so upset. And so I just ordered a Coke. All right. So he's laughing, he's having a good time, and everybody's having, like Louis the 14th cognac and, bottles of Dom Perignon, and which was the popular champagne back then. And, the high end, whatever, the top shelf liquors. And I'm just sipping my Coke, just watching this all. Finally, Jeff comes over and he's just having a good old time. And he's like, hey, where's your champagne? What's the matter? And they're all smoking cigars. And I said, I gotta say, what is wrong with you? You lost $25,000. We all know you lost that money. How can you be down here doing this? And the smile left his face, and he looked at me and he said, if you think losing one day is something that I should be depressed about, then you don't deserve to be a trader. He said, you better go home and think about what it means to be a trader. And I just looked at him and I said, okay. And I got up and I left. And I did think about it all weekend. And, back then I was just keeping, copious notes like Mark, just writing down, what does it mean to be a trader? What is my definition of being a trader? What does it mean to lose? Would I feel like a loser if I lost 25,000? Yeah, I would, absolutely. I mean, back then. So the following Monday, I came in and I was actually kind of embarrassed because I wasn't quite sure what he was getting at. And so we went out for coffee and he said, did you think about what I told you to think about? And I said, yes. And I told him what I had been writing down. And he said, so what did you come up with? I said, I don't see how you can lose that kind of money and then act like it doesn't matter. And he said, because it doesn't matter, because I know I'll make more the next trading day. And I said, oh, okay. So that's when the light bulb went off initially, because there was never any doubt in his mind that he wasn't going to make money, not make it back, but make money in the market. So that $25,000 glitch, to use current terminology, it meant nothing to him. And so that, I think that was my bad habit, was initially worrying about losing. I mean, because hey, I didn't have a lot of money back then, so every penny counted. But it was a good lesson for me to start understanding the dynamics of a winning mindset. So that, I would say, that was probably my first bad habit.
Would you
But
say?
it really wasn't a bad habit because it had a positive outcome.
Right. Well, yeah, I like that. Would you say, Paula, with the people you've worked with, I mean, because nobody likes to lose, right? And I like to think like our brains aren't necessarily like wired to like like you lose equals bad outcome, right? But I mean, as we know in trading, that's not always the case. Do a lot of people, especially like the newcomers, that's like a typical struggle, I would imagine, right? At first.
Well, yeah, because most traders today think that if they do everything right, they really can, quote, avoid losing trades.
Mhm.
It's just not going to happen, or if it does happen, it's going to be minimal. So they haven't really understood the concept of how the markets work and how you can do everything perfectly but still have a losing trade or a set of losing trades, just based on the human experience, the other trader on the other side of your trades perspective. It could be completely different than yours, and that's going to set the market in motion in ways that you did not anticipate. So that this gets back to the younger traders who think it's a computer game. And so when you take out that human element of, okay, another trader at any moment, at any second that I'm trading, could make the market move in a different direction. When you remove that element, then they don't understand why I did everything right and I still lost. Do you see?
Yeah. And this was this was something that was exemplified for me in poker, right? Paula, is that I could make the right play, get all my money in as an 80% favorite, and still lose, right? Because there's still a 20% chance I'm going to lose. Um, but is that the wrong move? No, of course not. And so I think like at least that helped me coming into trading, right? Like I could understand that concept. And JJ too, like, something she was saying that reminded me, right? Something you taught me is like, and you say it's like, you could have all your different technical indicators, you can make the right trade, but if like a big player wants to move the market, it don't matter. He don't care, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Like he don't
that's
care what your little
well,
technical indicators are saying.
well, the thing
Right.
is that people don't realize is when markets, especially if markets are a little illiquid and somebody comes in with a big size order, they're looking for liquidity and they are going to chew through you like a Mack truck going about 100 miles an hour down the highway. And they will get to where that bid is where they can get out of that position. Like if it's a sellout or a margin call or something's going wrong and somebody needs to move size, size takes preference. You better get out of the way because it's coming, and a
Right.
lot
And
of
that
people
doesn't
don't.
change in the markets. That is a
No,
constant.
Right.
That is.
exactly. And now it's just done by algorithms because so they could execute a lot faster.
Right.
It's like a Tiptronic transmission and a Porsche can, change gears faster than you can blink. But the agenda is still the same. That never changes.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to just add on to your comment about poker, um, as you said, there's an 80% chance that you're, favored to win. And so at that moment when you go all in, you went all in based on the information you had in that moment, correct?
Right. Correct. Yep.
Okay, so whether you win or lose doesn't matter because
Relevant.
that was the information you had that prompted you to act in the way that you acted to try and win. And so if traders use that same perspective with their trading, I'm putting on this trade or set of trades with the information I have in this now moment, then they're not going to feel like they lost anything because this was the information I had. This was a set of parameters. I followed all my rules. Bam. Okay, if I win, awesome. If I lose, it's just the cost of trading.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Definitely. Yeah. And
So thank you for bringing that up because
yeah.
that goes back to your initial question about, is playing poker or gambling in a professional manner. Yeah, it can be very beneficial to traders.
Oh, definitely. I mean, when I started working with Ray, he at least knew how to like manage his money and risk management,
Yeah,
because he came from that background, right?
right.
And the concept of a stop wasn't like he didn't fight me on that. He was like, oh, okay, I'll use a stop and that'll protect, keep my account from blowing up. And which I remember hearing an interview with you. You said there was some trading software that was telling people not to use stops, which is just criminal in my point, in my point of view. You know.
Crazy. Yeah, and poker too. Paul, and why JJ, I have such an affinity for psychology too, because you need that in poker too. Like it's
Yeah.
just, it's essentially the same. It's the same trading psychology, poker psychology. It's the same. It's the same thing, and I think poker, in certain respects, could be a little more unforgiving, in time at times. But yeah, I love this topic. Paula, next thing I wanted to ask you, I believe I heard Mark say this, in a seminar. Maybe it's in the books as well. But that, traders' psychology troubles boil down to two things: lack of confidence, being fearful. Could you maybe just briefly expand on those?
Okay, when a trader has lack of confidence, it usually stems from something that's happened previously. And I don't mean just a previous losing trade. Um, I would say that a lot of traders getting into the markets or who are in the markets, you know, not getting too deep here, but they have normal baggage. Okay, normal psychological baggage. I mean, we all have baggage. I mean, stuff has happened to all of us, and how we manage the energy of those experiences translates and correlates over into how we feel about ourselves. So if there's a lack of confidence on the part of any trader, then as I would help him work through it, I would say, well, why are you hesitating? Well, I don't know. That's why I'm calling you. No, no, okay, thanks. But why are you hesitating? Answer the question. And then it usually gets down to, I don't believe in my rules. And so then we have to go from there. Well, why don't you believe in your rules? Well, I don't know. So it kind of takes a little bit of digging, and it could be something very simple. It could just be, okay, well, I got the rules off the internet, but I don't know if they're any good. It could be something as simple as that. And I say, okay, well, okay, then let's, try and find you some rules or create some rules that you're more comfortable with. So, um, a lack of confidence is usually already there before they start trading. And trading, as we all know, will just exasperate that to a point that what you'll, you know, lose money instead of just, you know, anything else, and when you lose money, I mean, especially based on society's values, then you are, quote, a loser. And that's ingrained in us from everything all across the media. Everybody wants to be a rock star. Everybody's on, an influencer. Everybody's this or that. And so when you, have a set of losing trades because you don't have confidence in your ability, that's a double whammy. So, yeah, I mean, I would agree that a lack of confidence is not conducive to achieving your financial goals as a trader.
Yeah, for sure. How about the fearful aspect? Is that like in respects to maybe being fearful to execute, or
Well, it depends. I mean, there are common trading challenges that all traders have, and it may be just part of the learning curve of just not knowing
Hmm,
or not having enough experience, and same with the lack of confidence. It just may be, oh, I've been at this for 2 or 5 years, because I hear this all the time. I've been at this. That is the most common phrase. I'm like, what do you mean you've been at it? No, you're at a movie. You're at a park. You're not at trading. You're either in it or you're not. Period. And
Exactly.
so we have to take that back to the core, saying you're not in it. And so that's really primarily what we get at from the beginning, whether it's in a workshop or a one-on-one consultation, is they're not all in. And if you're not all in, then you're not a trader.
absolutely. Paula, I'm just curious. When you and Mark were, starting to write books, do these seminars and stuff, um, was the stuff you guys were writing just from personal experience? Were you guys doing, reading like psychology studies, books, etc.? Were you reading any like academic works?
No, absolutely not. All of our material is strictly based on our own experiences as traders, as well as coaching other traders. When we wrote The Disciplined Trader and Trading in the Zone, obviously the trading floor was still rocking and rolling. So most of our material originally was geared toward floor traders as well as institutional traders. And I think Mark traveled to 12 or 15 countries teaching. I traveled to 7, doing our workshops. And then we were doing workshops once a month, just about all across the US, teaching these concepts. And so having all those traders in our workshops and listening to their questions helped us further develop the materials as to what they were looking for, what they needed to resolve or solve what their trading challenges are. So, Mark, I will share, and it's all coming out in his biography anyway, but he was probably one of the most spiritual people I have ever known. He meditated for at least 2 hours every day, or prayed, whatever term anybody wants to subscribe to it. He kept copious daily journals. I mean, every thought, if he had a question, he would write down the question and wait for the answers to flow. And this is what we teach. It is still to this day. If you have a question about yourself, why am I losing? Why do I continue to not use stops? Write that question down and immediately write down the answer that comes into your brain right away, because that is your truth in the moment. And so, doing that, you go through a process of self-realization that is truly your own, but because you're not denying it and you're not editing it. It becomes universal truths. And that's what our books represent, is universal truths for having the most appropriate mindset, however you interpret our materials, that works for you. Like, we don't tell you how to trade. We don't tell you, well, yeah, I mean, I will say you got to use stops, I mean, stuff like that, just normal technical stuff. But, we don't tell you, well, you should be making this amount of money in the markets and you should know that, which a lot of other coaches do, which is not really fair to the traders, because then that puts pressure on them to perform in a way that may not be appropriate for them. So no, we did not read any other materials. We didn't subscribe to any academia. We were just really intent on creating our own body of works.
Awesome. And one of my questions was going to be on meditation, Paula, and your thoughts as obviously there's spiritual benefits. It's something that I've seen not only to help increase my performance, but also spiritual benefits. It's really neat to hear Mark meditated, I think you said, for like 2 hours. Do you have anything else to say about that? How he came about that? What were his thoughts? Like, was that one of like his keys, he thinks, like to really help his performance? Or yeah, just any thoughts around that?
Oh, absolutely. Mark was not raised with any real religious upbringing. His parents, well, his mother was Greek Orthodox, but I guess when they were growing up, the church was a couple hours away from where they lived, so it wasn't really conducive to driving to church every Sunday. But he always had a belief in God. Okay, and before we met, he had a partner, Bonnie Marlowe, and she really, I mean, he credits her, and I do too, and she and I are really good friends to this day. She began a journey of self exploration back in the 70s and early 80s when they were together, and invited Mark along on the journey. And so they started going to, the original quote self-help seminars and stuff like that. And she developed really good materials on vision boards, and she became quite successful doing that. And so successful that Mark had taken the job at Merrill Lynch in Chicago, and she was still back in Michigan, and she wanted to move to Chicago with him. But at the time, like I said, he's making 20 some thousand. He couldn't afford, her and her children to move to Chicago yet. And so she put into play her vision boards, and within 3 months, she had a job, and she moved to Chicago, and they moved into one of the best, most expensive condo buildings in Chicago, where the mayor lived. And she was just really good at creating her reality. And so Mark credits her for putting him on his journey to self-awareness by going to those, self-help seminars way back then. And he said almost every one of those self-help seminars, two of the things that they said is you have to keep a daily journal. You have to write longhand. Doesn't matter that, whether you have a computer or not. You have to write it down in your own handwriting, what you want to achieve, and how you're going to go about doing it. And you have to do that. And then you also have to pray or meditate or, just get into your center again for at least an hour every day. And so Mark did that. I, on the other hand, was raised Catholic, although by the time I was 15, my father said, okay, you're on your own now. You can do what you want. We went through all the process of, getting your first communion and confirmation and all that, but now you're old enough to make your own decisions, because he was a lifelong seeker. He said, hey, I don't think there's one better than the other. Whatever, universal truths work, that's what I'll use. So that's kind of the way I was raised. So it kind of worked together, because I was used to praying, and I have my prayers that I say every morning. Mark was used to meditating, and he made the best pot of coffee every morning before we would do that. So and I know you asked a question about bad habits, but I just had to interject here quickly, is that a lot of traders do ask, what do you and Mark do? What's your routine before you start trading? And I have to say that most traders, even though they're not on the trading floor anymore, they are superstitious to some degree. Okay, I mean, it is. That just doesn't change. So,
I
you
am.
know,
Yeah.
right,
Yep. Yep.
right, JJ.
I
So,
am.
I mean, if Mark spilled the coffee in the morning, that was it. He was not going to trade. Okay, I'm not kidding you. Now, if I get up and just, my hair doesn't look good. Okay. And this is a girl thing. I know. It's like, oh God, I look like crap. I'm not trading. Now, and that is something that we learn, because if it could be something as simple as that. But see, the way our philosophy is that Mark would sit down and start writing why he spilled the coffee. He would ask himself, why did I spill the coffee? And when I say spill the coffee, I mean like the whole pot. Okay, not just a couple drips off your cup, like if you knock the pot over. And if my hair just really looks like crap, like I won't even go out of the house. Okay, so then I'm going to say, okay, why does my hair look like crap? What's the deal here? So because that's your focus, and even if you think it's just in that moment, it's not, because it took you out of your trading perspective. So as Mark's cleaning up the coffee, grumbling about it, and I'm helping him because it's everywhere, and you know how coffee grinds go everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this is interesting. So now we're not in that flow. We're not in that meditative, philosophical psychology, knowing that we are focused on making money. Not 100%. Now we could be 95%, but that 5% is just enough to make us lose.
Sure. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So it's not. So the bad habit would be if we still went and traded.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
When you're not optimal. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I like that. The questioning, like you said, like Mark would even go down and like, why did I spill the coffee? Right. Like most people just
Yeah.
kind of would even just like gloss over that. Right. It's like the
Right.
questioning of everything. Why, why did I do this? Why am I like that? Or it just, I think that's a common trait, curiosity of high performance people, I would imagine. I think so. Um,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and I do the same thing. I mean, everything. Okay. And I'll give you another example. Mark was a competitive hockey player. I mean, he started playing when he was 4. I mean, he lived in Michigan. So if you didn't play hockey, they kicked you out of the state. And I'm sure you understand this, JJ, or JJ,
Oh,
being in
yeah.
Vancouver, right?
And well, I grew up in Saskatchewan, and
Oh, well, hello. Yeah, right.
it's even worse, and I don't know how to skate very well, so
Okay.
yeah, so
Well, they
at least
probably
we had
gave you a
that's why
pass.
he had to go to Vancouver. That's why he
thank
had to
God, thank
Right.
God we had football. Thank God we had football. Yeah.
Right. So, um, I mean, people will say it's a superstition, but see the way, and I continue to live my life. If things are not flowing
Mhm.
100%, then you have to stop and figure out why. So if Mark would be driving to one of his hockey games, if he would get more than 3 red lights,
The
he
red
would turn around
lights.
and come home, because he felt this is how deeply we approach, you know, trading and life in general.
Yeah.
He would feel okay, because then he'd start thinking about, okay, I normally don't get 3 red lights. Why am I getting 3 red lights? What is the universe trying to tell me? And he'd say, I guess I'm going to get hurt playing today. And he would turn around and come home. That's how seriously we live this type of philosophy. And the one time he did not listen to those red lights, he pulled a groin muscle and was out for 3 months at a game.
Yeah.
So
It's yeah, I remember hearing that story on an interview you did, and it totally, I'm completely convinced. Like I'm not that dedicated to it, but where I will sort of push a distraction away. But I do understand the focus part of it, because uh, when I was making markets, I could like make markets in 20 different stocks simultaneously because you're controlling the order flow. But when you're retail trading, it's all about focus, and if you can't focus
right.
and can't get in that zone, boy, you just make so many bad mistakes.
Yeah, I
you
mean,
know.
and there doesn't even have to be anything that happens. I mean, me personally, I know I've mentioned this before on other recordings, but um, I'm not a good trader on Mondays. I don't know
Mhm.
why. I just don't. But and this is one of the things I teach. Traders to go back and see when they had most of their winning trades, what days of the week and what time of the day. Not the amount of money, just just the average winning trades. What days of the week do you have that? And most of my losing trades are on Mondays. So I just don't trade on Mondays. I know that about myself. I don't know why it is. I don't care because I just don't trade on Mondays. So whatever the reason is, it doesn't matter because I'm not forcing it and I'm not continuing to trade without knowing what the reason is. The point is there is something there about Mondays where I had most of my losing trades years ago. And so I thought, well, you know what? There must be something else I'm supposed to be doing on Mondays other than trading. And so there you go. So that's where a lot of my consulting comes in on Mondays. But so that it's just knowing yourself. That's all.
Yeah.
Okay. So it doesn't have to be anything as dramatic as the red lights or spilling the coffee or having a bad hair day or whatever. But those things that we just take for granted, as you said, JJ, you just kind of slough it off. You
Yeah.
can't do that when it comes to trading.
No, that's true.
Right.
It's really true. The focus is so important.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation right here on this topic. I have a lot of things I'm going to take away personally from that, and I think that, yeah, it's just like you said, Paul, the knowing of yourself, because I feel like people could take some of the things you said, or maybe like superstitious, but it's just more of when knowing when you're maybe out of a flow state, when you're gonna be performing 95% as opposed to 100. um yeah, that was really good, really interesting. um Paula, do people need to find an edge first before they work on their psychology, or is this something that could be worked in conjunction?
Yeah, I mean, the psychology of trading isn't going to happen without trading. I mean, you're not going to know what you need to know if you're not in the markets. So, yeah, I mean, defining your edge, it's trial and error, and just practicing over and over again and see what happens. In trading in the zone, the exercise in there about doing the 20 trade uh, example. I just want to stress that that's a typo in the book. It isn't supposed to say a set of 20 trades. It was supposed to be multiple sets of 20 trades.
Hmm.
So that's why I have the page on the website stating that. And, the publisher being who they are, they won't make the change because God forbid they should do anything for the authors. But anyway, but that's another book. Anyway, but so I just wanted to stress that it's for anybody about, they may have a question about that exercise. So getting back to your question, yeah, it kind of goes hand in hand, because if you're not practicing what you're trying to learn, then the psychological factors aren't going to come into play.
Right, right.
And that is a lot of that is a lot of the question that I get is about defining or redefining their edge. So
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. Paula, I know we've kind of, talked about, like, when you first started to now, similarities and differences. Um, but I wanted to ask you, is there any difference in, like, common psychological struggles that maybe traders face now in 2022 as opposed to the early days? And I'm thinking along the lines of, like, maybe would information be more readily available, social media, and things of the like.
I think it's more challenging for traders today because of the internet and anyone throwing up a shingle stating they're an expert at trading, whatever facet of trading there is. And that really has done far more damage psychologically and financially to traders in the last 10 years than any current events. And a lot of what I do is clean up from that, and it's really kind of sad. But on the other hand, and I don't know I don't know where this comes from, but I don't understand why anybody would pay someone on the internet not knowing anything about them. All they do is read their website and all the glowing fake testimonials possibly, and not do their due diligence beforehand and see if the person's really who they say they are. I don't get this. I have all these guys, well, he said this and he claimed that and his system's supposed to do this and blah blah. I paid him $50,000 and now he's not returning my
Jeez.
calls and the
Yeah.
system is crap. And I'm like, okay, well, did you get a track record? Did you get referrals? No.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that was your
Yeah.
$50,000 learning lesson. Okay, what do you want me to say? Who's going
Well,
to give out that kind of money
don't
and not
don't
investigate somebody,
don't you
right?
find, Paula, that people will spend more time researching what kind of dishwasher or stove they're going to buy, right? Or looking at countertops than researching, exactly what you said, or even spending time figuring out how a market works. It's funny because, I think, it just, people are so, unfortunately, so susceptible to marketing. And
Right.
some of these guys, I mean, they're savage marketers. They're guys who
Oh yeah.
they're chewing through hundreds of people every month, getting them into these rooms and
I think it's
just,
like the dangling of the carrot, right? It's like, oh,
yeah,
make the money, and it's like they're in the Lambo, and yeah, I guess all that's really effective, huh?
yeah,
Well, and it
amazing.
goes back to the inherent underlying cause, which is the traders do not want to take responsibility for losing. So,
True.
oh, well, that guy said this. He promised me that. Yeah, well, you played a part in it too. And I'm not putting anybody down who,
No.
who's been fleeced. Don't get me wrong, but we're all adults here. And like you just said, JJ, you're going to spend hours and hours researching a new car or,
Yep.
the comps in your neighborhood, whether you're going to sell your house or buy a new
Yep.
one or whatever. And yet you're not going to even spend half an hour, just trying to track down who the guy who owns the website is.
Yep.
I mean, come on. And I'm not saying you deserve to lose because of that, but take responsibility.
Yep. Very true.
I mean, and
But
so, and so you couple that with the political pandemics and how all these people are allegedly taking millions out of the market. It's all that on top of the most traders really don't want to take responsibility for losing their own money because of their own inaction or lack of action. Because the bottom line is they're not treating their trading like a business.
right, right. It would seem to me it just kind of indicates I don't want to say like a lack of seriousness, but there probably are serious or want to, but um yeah, I mean, I don't know how else to put it, right? I mean, if you're going to research more about other things as opposed to your own trading, like what would you say to someone in that scenario, Paula?
You're right. They're not taking it seriously.
Hmm.
Like I said earlier, I've been at this game. It's not a game. I mean, yeah, we
Exactly.
use that word, it's
Yeah.
like whatever, but it's a business. It's your business. You're an entrepreneur. And a lot of the clients that I work with, I'll say, go look up the definition of entrepreneur and come back to me and tell me what that means. And then, well, okay, but that's not who I am. I don't own a company. You don't, you don't have to own a company to be in business. Any endeavor that you work at that you want to make a profit from is a business by the pure definition of the word. And so that just still goes back to they just don't want to take responsibility if it fails because ultimately they don't believe they have it within themselves to make a go of it for whatever reasons. And I'm not talking about startups or anything like that, or new traders. I'm talking about doctors, attorneys, uh, high level, engineers, people who are highly educated and already have a really good career. They may have, quite a bit saved up, or they've been very successful, but now that maybe they don't want to do that anymore, they're tired of it, and they look at trading as a way to still work and provide income or to increase their income. But it all boils down to it takes a lot of mental work to clean out whatever is limiting you to make it as a trader. If you don't know what you're thinking or why, then you can't make it as a trader. But everybody said, oh my God, now I'm going to have to go through psychotherapy and I'm going to have to, whatever. And it's like, that's not what we're talking about here. All we're talking about is taking a mental inventory of your brain matter, okay? Of like, what do you think about money? What do you believe about money? What do you think you're worth? Seriously, what do you think you're worth in terms of how much you can take out of the market? How much do you want to take out of the market? Just that one question. How much do you want to take out of the market? 99% of all the traders, all these years, can't answer that question. Mm-hmm. A lot, a boatload, as much as I can. No, what's your number? Okay, 10 million. Oh, get real. So the point is, if you can't even answer that one question, then give it up until you can. You're not understanding that this is all about self-worth, thinking, knowing and believing that you are worth every penny you can get out of the market and keeping it. And if you don't know what your self-worth is, what you're worth, what you think you're worth, or believe what you're worth, and if you don't believe that you deserve all your profit, then it's not going to happen. You're not going to grow your equity. And you can't have any conflict with money at all. And so a lot of the stuff that I teach is helping people come to terms with what they do think about money, because everyone has conflicts about money when they're, money doesn't grow on trees, money is the root of all evil, and all that other crap that's all man-made, right? And I'd like to meet the man who said, money is the root of all evil, because I can be damn sure he was a multimillionaire. Okay. So, and especially for the ones that are faith-based, they say, well, rich men don't get into heaven. And there was a broker that I was working with a number of years ago, and he said, well, this is what my pastor tells me. And I said, okay. I said, how big is your church? He said, well, it's like 3,000 seater. Well, it's a pretty decent size. I said, what kind of house does your pastor live in? He goes, oh yeah, let me tell you about this house. We helped him build it. It's 11,000 square feet. It's got a 4-car garage and, Olympic-sized swimming pool, and it's on 10 acres. And he's going on and on, right? So he gets all done. He goes, yeah, he's a good man. And yeah. Uh-huh. I said, well, what do you think his net worth is? He said, oh, I don't know, but maybe 5 or 10 million, something like that. I said, well, you think he's going to heaven? He goes, oh yeah, he's going to heaven. I said, well, isn't he a rich man? And he goes, well, yeah. I said, but you just said rich men don't get into heaven. There was this long pause. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, what do you mean? What do I mean? What do you mean? I said, do you think your pastor's going to heaven? But you said he's rich. So he's telling you that rich men don't get into heaven. So that means only he's a rich man, but only he gets to go to heaven. But you're a rich man, but you don't get to go. I said, and then you wonder why you can't make more money trading? Because there's a conflict with your faith. So he wasn't real happy. I will be honest with you. He wasn't real happy that I made that connection for him, but ultimately it did help him down the road. I mean, it took him a while because it really hurt. It hurt him because here he was listening to this pastor for decades, not realizing that the pastor was reinforcing a belief that you can't be rich and get into heaven, even though he's physically was seeing the direct opposite of that with his wealthy pastor.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, 100%. It's interesting. Do you find that, Paula, like not just like in that case, but to where people maybe like have like an angry reaction or like troubled by some of the things they start finding about themselves? Is that fairly common?
Well, I wouldn't say that they're angry about it. I think they're more disappointed that they didn't see it sooner. Sure. Okay. And so I just point them out and say, look, what's the point of being disappointed or upset that you didn't see it sooner? Because if you could have seen it sooner, you would have. That's the way it works. Yeah. Or you just weren't ready to see it. Or maybe somebody else told you, but you didn't believe them because for whatever reason, like husbands and wives, like the wife will make a suggestion, but till the husband hears it from one of his buddies. It's not a real good suggestion, right? It's just human nature. Okay. So a lot of it is just helping them not be upset, like, because they just didn't see it. Or the other part of the spectrum is, they'll say, well, my parents never taught me about money. And every single one of those people that are upset about that are already successful. They're doctors, they're lawyers, whatever. So I just kind of point that out to them. I say, hey, where are you at today financially? Well, I'm doing pretty good. Well, okay. So your parents didn't teach you about making money, or they didn't teach you good money habits or whatever. Apparently they did something right, because look where you are right now. Now, you can be angry because your parents didn't do this, or your teachers didn't do that, or you were told this or that. But how does that serve you to help you grow your equity, to hang on to that? That's just useless negative energy that's taking you away from your goal. So it isn't necessarily people get angry. They're just, once you extrapolate it out and say, look, you have money to open a trading account. I don't care if it's a $5,000 account or a $500,000 account. The point is, you have that disposable income that you created. So you're already a success right now. So all the other baggage, shall we say, that's limiting you, let's just de-energize that and get rid of it so you can become more of a success. And all that is just letting it go. It's a decision that every trader has to make before they put on any trade every single morning. Do I want to be right, or do I want to make money? Bottom line, that's the only question you have to ask yourself before you put on any trade every single day. Do I want to be right, or do I want to make money? And only each trader knows the answer to that. And your results will reflect your answer.
I love it. Paula, how important is it to a trader's performance in taking care of themselves in a holistic sense?
I think it's pretty important, and I say pretty important because in a holistic sense, whether that's physical, spiritual, or mental, I teach the three amigos, which is body, mind, and spirit. And so if you are not feeling good physically, and it could just be the sniffles, now that's on your brain, okay, and you're reaching for the Kleenex, or you're looking for the nose spray or whatever. If you had a fight with your spouse, that maybe it's over, but it's still in your brain. So now mentally you're like, oh, I could have said this, or I should have said that, or why didn't she just shut the hell up, or whatever. Just giving, just making off the cuff remarks here, but we've all been there. Okay. So and if, let's say, you had too much to eat and you're not feeling good because you got an upset stomach, so now you're thinking about that. So if any one of those kind of combinations comes into play, or even just one of them, now you're not 100%. And that's getting back to spilling the coffee, or me having a bad hair day. I'm not 100%. Mark wasn't 100%. And so we would go right down and say, why is my hair not working out? What is it about myself I don't like this morning? Why did I spill the coffee? What was the universe trying to tell me? Am I drinking too much coffee? Was I being sloppy as I was making it, and that's why I spilled it? Which means I would be sloppy as a trader today. So this is the kind of holistic or philosophical approach that we created, and which we use, and I still use, because it's all about your mental environment. If you don't feel good, it's not going to happen. That's it. I mean, I can tell you the first time I went to go buy a car after Mark passed away, because Mark always bought the cars. He'd say, what color do you want? I'm like, okay, I want this color, and I want a good stereo and heated seats. Okay, that's it. Excuse me. And so the first time I went to go buy a car, I was not 100%, because I had never negotiated for a car by myself. I know that sounds ridiculous these days, but first of all, when we were in Chicago, we didn't even have a car, because you're in the city. Like, you live in New York City, you don't have a car. Mm-hmm. So when we moved to Arizona for a couple of years on business, of course, we had to get a car. So, Mark went out and bought a car. I didn't care. I'm not a car person. Well, I wasn't a car person, but I am now. Okay. So I had to go negotiate. I picked out the car I wanted, but I knew I just had just this flicker, just this little twinge in my stomach thinking, okay, I'm a widow and I've never done this before. And even though I, talked to a bunch of friends, like, what do I say? What don't I say? And all that, I hadn't done it before. So it was uncharted territory. And of course, they're like, oh, yeah, great deal, 25% interest and, whatever. And I'm like, I don't think so. And they're like, well, I'm sorry, that's the best we can do. And I said, okay. We did the test drive and I really liked the car. And I said, okay, well, let me think about it. And I got up to leave. And the look on their face, on the salesman's face, he was in shock. It never occurred to him that I would say, let me think about it, because of his beliefs about a single woman coming in to buy a car and probably his experiences. And so I went to go walk away and he goes, well, no, seriously, you really don't want the car? I said, oh no, I love the car. I said, but I just don't think that's the best deal. I said, and that's okay. I said, I'm not upset, because if that's the best you can do, I get it. I mean, you're a big car dealership. You have overhead. You got all this stuff going on. I said, but it's just not my thing right now. So thank you. So I walked out. By the time I got home, there was 3 messages from the sales guy, the manager of the dealership, and I don't know, somebody else, the closer, I guess, in the finance department. And they were just practically begging me to come buy this car. Now, first of all, it was not a brand new car. It was a used car. It was 2 years old. I always like to buy them gently used, a year or 2 years old, under warranty, because you already have that devaluation off the top.
Let somebody else take the hit. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. So, and this was what this was. And it was a BMW. It was the first time I had ever bought a BMW. And so I thought about it, and I didn't call them back that day because I was just laughing. And I thought, okay, I had the twinge because I was nervous, but he, he had, the tell was there on his face. And you know what I'm talking about, Ray. He blew it. Just, it wasn't a big surprise look, but it was just his flicker in his eyes that I saw. And if I hadn't been staring right at him, I would have missed it. So it was so cool. And I thought, okay, all right, I had a flicker and then he had a flicker because we both didn't know what was going to happen. Well, he kind of thought he knew, and I kind of thought I knew, but it was a super cool experience because it was awesome. Because anyway, I waited till the next day and I called him up. I said, I really appreciate it. I said, but we're not on the same page or the same universe in terms of numbers here. So it's okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. It's 3 days. They keep calling. They're emailing me. The numbers are going down. The numbers are going down. And finally, I went over there and I said, look, guys, it's all right. Let it go. Let it go. So I said, I gave you my base. This is it. If you can't do that, I get it. And they said, we're going to do it. I said, get out of town. I said, well, wait a minute. I need to take it for another test drive again. And they were like, what? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Oh, way to torture them.
So,
That's
and
beautiful.
I mean, at that point, I really didn't care if I got the car or not. I didn't need the car. I just saw it and I thought it would be fun. And also too, I knew I had to get the car buying experience under my belt. Okay. It's just, I had to do it. And, so I did have fun with it and I did love the car. It was an awesome car. And so I kept it for 2 years and then I went back. And so now I'm a Beamer girl. Okay. So, and now I have this great relationship. Of course, that was in Arizona and now I'm out in California, and I have a great relationship with my dealership in Irvine. And every 2 years or 18 months, I mean, I just got a new car last November and it was like nothing. I saw it online. I said, hey, that's pretty decent. Went up there. It even had more bells and whistles than I thought. It had everything I wanted, everything. And it was just 2 years old and it was originally $70,000 and they had marked it down to like 40 and I offered them 30 and they took it, 4% interest on the loan. And I'm like, okay, 4 years, I've grown, this is awesome. So, but the point is I didn't have that flicker. I didn't have that hesitancy because It didn't matter to me. If I got the car, fabulous. If I didn't, there'll be another opportunity. And that's the same way that I approach the markets. If I make profit, great. And if not, there's another opportunity. That's the way it works. So whether it's buying a car or a house or, a diamond ring or, whatever, the bottom line is, if you get it, great. If you have no hesitation and you're 100% confident in yourself, everything's in alignment holistically, it's going to work. And if it doesn't work, it just wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
Not that particular trade or that particular item or event. So you just have to really believe that there is always opportunity. Always.
Right. So sort of a non-attachment, Paula, would you say?
Right. You can't be attached to the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Now but you have to be attached to knowing yourself.
Yeah. Right.
Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense. Complete sense. JJ, that's about it for me. Question wise, did you have anything else you wanted to ask her before we get going?
Oh man, I think we've covered pretty much everything. It's just, you know, we always talk about, like, we have our trading room and we always talk about Mark Douglas, and every time somebody starts getting, into the side of this, that book, Trading in the Zone is always the first recommendation. And it's funny because I just identified with him so much, especially like the story about the Porsche being repossessed and things like that. Because that happened to me after 9/11. I had a Porsche and couldn't pay for it anymore, and I just called him up and said, "Better come take it,"
Right.
And after I saw him do that, I was like, you know what? I don't feel so bad about it. It's
I know.
because it happened like to him probably 10 or 15 years earlier than my experience. But so it just there's so many things that um, you know we're so grateful for his knowledge and your knowledge, and it's wonderful. It's we're just so happy that you came and shared your wisdom with us. And we'd love you to come and drop by and talk to our folks as well whenever you have a chance.
Sure. That would be super cool. And
Yeah.
and one thing to keep in mind, when Mark put that in there about losing everything and filing bankruptcy, there were so many people that were just shocked. And even the publisher said, "You got to take that out of the book. No one's going to buy your book if they knew that you filed bankruptcy." And he's like, "I don't care.
Exactly.
It's meaningless to me because
Yeah.
it was all part of me becoming who I am today and who I will be tomorrow."
Exactly.
And so, even for probably, I don't know, 10, 15 years at workshops, traders would bring that up and say, "Oh my God, I could never let anybody know that." It's like, Mark's like,
Yeah,
"Why not? Who cares?
exactly.
Who
Yeah, I mean,
cares?"
exactly. I mean, before 9/11, we had two Porsches and we were living in a penthouse. And afterwards, I was taking the bus and we were living above an Irish bar. So,
Yeah, right.
but then you battle your way back. Yeah.
I think,
It's,
yeah. Well, I mean, thank God that stayed in the book too, because I think that's what
yeah,
makes him relatable, right? Or
yeah.
it's even like,
Makes
oh
it
wow,
real.
like Mark Douglas went broke and lost his
Right.
car. Like, oh, I can do it. Like, I can come back. So I
Yeah,
think it
exactly.
also gives a sense of hope as well.
Yep,
Right.
definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there's a bunch of goofballs on the internet that are calling him a failed trader and trying to reinterpret our materials.
Really.
And yeah. I mean, I don't look this stuff up. People love our work so much. They send me these links, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So of course I went on the post and said, "Are you talking about when he filed bankruptcy?" In 1980 or 1979.
Yeah.
And the guy's like, "Well, I don't know. I just heard he was a failed trader." I said, "Well, you better
Oh,
edit those comments, but and start worrying about your own trading." But um, and for the most part, Mark would laugh when people would express their shock that he would talk about it. But he said, if you're gonna hide something from others, you're hiding things from yourself,
hmm
and that's the way it works. So if you can't be honest with yourself, and I'm not saying you have to broadcast everything out, publicly, but if you can't be honest with yourself and laugh at yourself and learn from whatever you went through at the time, then you can't accomplish your goals financially.
I love it. And so that's going to conclude today's episode of Confessions of a Market Maker. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please rate and review it for us. If you'd like to join a supportive and professional community of traders, you can join us at microefutures.com. Paula, tell the listeners where they can find you and anything else you'd like them to know.
Okay, you can go to markdouglas.com or paulatwebb.com, and you'll find our website. Our phone number is 760-636-4290 Pacific time zone. And of course, we're on Twitter, _MarkDouglas_. And with that said, I wish you all the best in your trading. And just remember, you've got this.
I love it. JJ, parting thoughts?
Just thank you so much for being with us. We really, really appreciate it. And, we'd love to have you back.
My pleasure.
Yes,
you guys are great hosts. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Paula, just for going into detail, sharing your wisdom with us. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. So thanks a lot. And for Paula Webb, I'm Paulie Walnuts. He's the gorilla of House Street. You stop so.